Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle and this is a tag video. I know, I don't do tag videos very often, but I was tagged by this one a little while ago by Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf, and I finally got the answers to these questions, and so I thought this is a great time to do this tag video. This is the generally speaking tag, originally created by Olly from Criminali. If you've never checked him out, go check out his channel. He's great, and he was the creator of Garb August, which just took place in August, all about reading trash. And so yeah, he's got some great videos. I'm going to link to his original video for this tag down below, as well as to Alice's channel as well. So go check them out because they are both fantastic. Okay, so the prompts for this tag, which is basically all about genre fiction, but I liked the way that that Olly looked at it. There is genre fiction, but you quite often get bits of genre in other genres, and I think that's kind of what he was going for here. So the first prompt is a horrifying book that isn't horror. Now, this is good because I don't read horror. I'm too scaredy pants for that. But I do read books that have horrifying parts. I decided to go with Ragdoll by Daniel Cole. And I read this one a little while ago, so I got the synopsis to remind myself what this book is about. William Fox, a controversial detective known as the Wolf, has just been reinstated to his post after he was suspended for assaulting a vindicated suspect. Still under psychological evaluation, Fox returns to the force, eager for a big case. When his former partner and friend, Detective Emily Baxter, calls him to a crime scene, he's sure this is it. The body is made of the dismembered parts of 6 victims, sewn together like a puppet. A corpse that becomes known as the Ragdoll. And there you have it. There is the horrifying part of a book that is not horror. Fox is tasked with identifying the 6 victims, but that gets dicey when his reporter ex-wife anonymously receives photographs from the crime scene, along with a list of 6 names, and the dates on which the Ragdoll killer plans to murder them. The final name on the list is Fox. Baxter and her trainee partner Alex Edmonds hone in on figuring out what links the victims together before the killer strikes again. But for Fox, seeing his name on the list sparks a dark memory, and he fears that the catalyst for these killings has more to do with him and his past than anyone realizes. So there you have it. That kind of a crime scene, that kind of a victim, that was definitely horrifying. Now, I did manage to get through that book because despite the horrifying nature of the victim, it wasn't too descriptive, and the book itself wasn't actually all that violent. So it was actually a fairly good read. So there you go. That's prompt number 1. Prompt number 2, a book with a terrible crime that isn't a crime novel. And so for this one, I decided to go with The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I've just finished reading this one. I read it for 2.5 months with a bunch of other booktubers. It was great. I loved it. And this book definitely has a terrible crime because our main character, Edmond Dantes, gets sent to prison, and he spends 14 years there, and upon his release he sets out on a plan of revenge for those who put him there. And so the terrible crime in that book is, well, there's a number of them, because it could be the crime that got him put in prison in the first place. It was a crime what they did to him. But then there was also some crimes that happened as well in the book, so I think it fits really, really well. Number 3, a book about love that isn't a romance. And I decided to go with Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. Now, in that very first book, Anne is 11 years old when she's adopted by brother and sister Matthew and Marilla. And there is a lot of love in that book. There's the love between Matthew and Marilla that is there but is never really spoken. Then there's the love that develops between Anne and Marilla and Anne and Matthew as well. And that's also fantastic because that's rarely spoken as well. And then there's just the love of friendships in the book. She develops a friendship with Diana. So that's definitely a book about love that isn't a romance. And so I thought that was a good answer to that question. Number 4 is a book with a puzzle that isn't a mystery. And for this one, I decided to go with Secrets of a Charmed Life by Susan Meissner, because this one definitely had a puzzle in it, but it was definitely not a mystery. This is a historical mystery set in England during World War II. Well, it's a dual timeline. So current day Oxford, young American scholar Kendra Van Zant, eager to pursue her vision of a perfect life, interviews Isabel McFarland just when the elderly woman is ready to give up secrets about the war that she has kept for decades, beginning with who she really is. So that's a puzzle. What Kendra receives from Isabel is both a gift and a burden, one that will test her convictions and her heart. 1940s England. As Hitler wages an unprecedented war against London's civilian population, hundreds of thousands of children are evacuated to foster homes in the rural countryside. But even as 15-year-old Emmy Downtree and her much younger sister Julia find refuge in a charming Cotswold cottage, Emmy's burning ambition to return to the city and apprentice with a fashion designer pits her against Julia's profound need for her sister's presence. Acting at cross purposes, just as the Luftwaffe rains down its terrible destruction, the sisters are cruelly separated and their lives are transformed. So there's a number of puzzles in this one, because there's also the puzzle of what happens to those sisters. So that's my answer for prompt number 4. Prompt number 5 is a book with magic that isn't a fantasy. And I thought I was very clever here because I was very literal and on the nose. And so I decided to go with The Zigzag Girl by Ellie Griffiths. This is the first in a mystery series that is set in Brighton in 1950. A girl is found cut into 3 sections, and Detective Inspector Edgar Stevens is convinced the killer is mimicking a famous magic trick, the Zigzag Girl. The inventor of the trick, Max Mephisto, served with Edgar in a special ops group called the Magic Men that used stage illusions to confound the enemy. Max still performs, touring with ventriloquists, sword swallowers, and dancing girls. When Edgar asks for his help with the case, Max tells him to identify the victim, for it takes the special sidekick to do the Zigzag Girl. Those words haunt Max when he learns the victim was a favorite former assistant of his own. And when Edgar receives a letter warning of another trick on the way, he realizes that it is the Magic Men themselves who are in the killer's sights. This is a really fun series that is, I think, overlooked. I only ever hear people talking about Ellie Griffiths' Ruth Galloway series, which is set also in England, but modern day. And it's a good series. Ruth Galloway is a forensic archaeologist, I think. And it's a good series. But this one is fantastic, and I don't ever hear this one talked about. So, little plug there for the Magic Men series. Number 6, a book that thrilled you that isn't a thriller. And this one, I don't read a lot of thrillers, so I really had to think hard about what book did I find thrilling, and I decided it was actually pretty obvious. It's The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. I read that this year, and boy, is that a thrilling book in the literal sense of the word, right? Like, it brings up all the emotions. It's very exciting, which is interesting considering that it's a book set in the medieval time period about the building of a cathedral. So that sounds really boring. But he wrote just such a compelling story with really fantastic characters that you have very strong feelings about. So it is definitely a thrilling book. And then the last prompt is a book with science that isn't science fiction. And so for this, I decided to go with The Murder on Black Swan Lane by Andrea Penrose. Because in this book, we meet the Earl of Rexford, who possesses a brilliant scientific mind, but boredom and pride lead him to reckless behavior. So, when pompous, pious Reverend Josiah Holworthy publicly condemns him for debauchery, Rexford unsheaths his rapier-sharp wit and strikes back. As their war of words escalates, London's most popular satirical cartoonist, A.J. Quill, skewers them both. But then, the clergyman is found slain in a church, his face burned by chemicals, his throat slashed ear to ear, and Rexford finds himself the chief suspect. An artist in her own right, Charlotte Sloane has secretly slipped into the persona of her late husband, using his nom de plume, A.J. Quill. When Rexford discovers her true identity, she fears it will be her undoing. But he has a proposal. Use her sources to unveil the clergyman's clandestine involvement in questionable scientific practices and unmask the real murderer. Soon, Lord Rexford and the mysterious Mrs. Sloane plunge into the dangerous shadow world hidden among London's intellectual enclaves to trap a cunning adversary. I really like that series, and I like that Rexford has this interest in science, and he's often doing experiments in his own home, and he belongs to the Royal Society and all of that, because you don't tend to get a lot of that in mysteries, and so I find that really fascinating. And the characters of Rexford and Sloane are fantastic, and they make a great investigative duo. So there you have it. Those are my answers to the prompts for the generally speaking tag. Now, I was actually tagged months ago, so I don't know who's done this or not. So I'm just going to tag some people, and if you've already done it, then great. And if you haven't, then I would be really interested in hearing your answers to these prompts. So I'm going to tag Nikki from Red Dot Reads, and Berna from Berna's Bookish Adventures. And let me know in the comment section down below. Let's go with a book with science that isn't science fiction. Let me know in the comment section down below a book that you've enjoyed that was that had science but that wasn't science fiction. I think that would be really interesting. And I will see you for another video soon. Bye.